project on a scholarly article about cognitive dissonance theory, and the article was entitled Cognitive Dissonance Theory and the Certification Examination and the Role of Responsibility. And it was done by Pai-Yu Chang, and it was actually done in Taiwan. So some keywords that we need to go over and key concepts before I continue to talk about the study. And some of those would be what cognitive dissonance theory is, and it's ultimately the theory that states that dissonance will occur if one's cognitions aren't agreeing at that time, and they would ultimately want to reduce that dissonance. And I explain dissonance as an uncomfortable feeling resulting from an inconsistency among one's beliefs and attitudes, which is ultimately their cognitions. And I also wanted to explain what the certification examination is. And it's an exam that will supply undergraduate students with a professional certification. More specifically, they're common in technological and vocational subjects, and this is going to positively impact these students by putting them ahead in the competitive job field that there is today. The hypothesis that Pai-Yu Chang came up with in this study was that a student's sense of responsibility is positively related to his or her motivation to take the certification examination. So if they feel more responsibility, then they're going to be more likely to take the certification exam. So the goal or purpose of this study, or the research question, is based on cognitive dissonance theory, will students' motivation to take the certification exam increase if he or she feels more responsibility for his or her actions and decisions? So in order to do this study, they use an empirical approach, and they used a survey with the population being a group of 200 college students, and they had them take an initial survey that would measure their intent to take the certification exam. And they came up with a scale to use specifically for this study called the Semantic Differential Scale for Certification Examination. And this basically just provided a scale, a 100-point score, which would base their intent to take the certification exam. So this group of 200 students took a pretest, and they were evaluated on 11 items using bipolar adjectives, so worthless, valuable, unpleasant, pleasant. And those are the kind of things they had to rate these 11 items on. And a single 100-point score was used to see what their intent to take the certification exam was. And in this initial exam, there was lower than 50 out of the 200 students that had a high intent to take this exam. So then they were randomly assigned to one of 3 experimental conditions, which was either a high responsibility, moderate responsibility, and low responsibility group. And what they did was they were given a report that was a 1-page paragraph report, and they were all the same length. And this report they were told that this report was going to help them in it was going to provide valuable insight in order to take the certification exam, to give them, and so they would get benefits from reading the report. And so they were given the versions of this report, and then they were to take a test, which was called the post-test. And they were to take this test, and it was going to provide their new attitudes of taking the certification exam to see if responsibility had anything to do with it. So in this study, the independent variable was personal responsibility, and it was manipulated, like I said, in the way that the high responsibility group was given a report that emphasized being fully responsible for poor job performance and taking full responsibility for that. And likewise, a moderate responsibility one was just like they didn't stress responsibility too much, and low responsibility didn't stress it at all. The dependent variable was a semantic differential scale, and like I said, this was developed purely for this study, and that was the same for all 3 groups. So the results of this study, it provided that participants who were given the high responsibility report actually had more were more likely to change their attitudes about the certification exam, and they were more motivated to take it. And this was because of cognitive dissonance. And the hypothesis was supported, and the research question was answered. And it was consistent with the fact, like I said, that the group that was given the paragraph emphasizing high responsibility was more likely to have a positive attitude change. And the group that received the moderate responsibility report had a more positive reaction to taking the certification exam than those that read the low responsibility report. And these results are important because they further explain the cognitive dissonance theory as it applies to students and their sense of personal responsibility. So when a student feels personally responsible for the consequences associated with their certification exam, dissonance will occur. And as CDT theory states, because of this dissonance, students feel a need to reduce the negative feeling that has emerged. And so the results of this study helped clarify the role of internal cognitions and dissonance that may occur on business students or just any students, and it may affect their views on taking the certification examination.